I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's just
It's just a mess.
a nightmare.
So that's the item that people think they're doing their duty by putting it in the recycle bin, but yet it's garbage.
It's got so much going on. It's not even close.
Hello. This is John Sacco, and this is Pile of Scrap. And I'm here with Jason Young from the Allan Company. How do you like the name of our podcast, Pile of Scrap?
It's appropriate.
It can be for our industry at times. Hey, Jason, thanks for agreeing to join us. And so, to give you a little background on what we're doing with our podcast is, I feel it's important that we bring people in the industry and all forms of recycling to bring their knowledge. And this isn't just about, look, for full disclosure, you don't own a piece of Sierra equipment. We do trade paper, right? We
Yes.
trade OCC, but so full disclosure that you're an industry leader. You sat on my executive committee at ISRI, and I consider you a friend, but a really knowledgeable individual. So let's get started and give us the history of the Allan Company. Tell us a little bit about the Allan Company, the history and where you came from and where you are.
Okay, well, we started in 1965. It was started by my father, Steve Young. He started picking up computer tab cards, punch cards.
Oh yeah.
And he basically, my grandfather worked at a scrap yard in Los Angeles, waste paper yard, not a scrap yard. And my father became a sub dealer for them. So because they were a union shop, at that point in time there was really only 3 big paper stock dealers in Los Angeles. They were a union shop, and they had all these little sub dealers who had pickup trucks that would run out and pick up, whatever they wanted, whatever their union drivers didn't want to pick up. So difficult to handle, hard to get to type of stuff. These sub drivers would pick them up, bring them back to sort them out when they got to their house or wherever they were at, bring them downtown and sell them. And that's how it started. His garage at my grandfather's house got too full. And, so he rented a little, it would basically be considered a storage unit right down the street here.
Here in Baldwin Park?
Right. We own the property now, but it's, about a half a block down. And it was 14624 3/4 was his address. And the neighbors were just renting storage units, so they allowed him to start using the yard as like his buyback. So we started buying at the door with a scale. That's kind of how we started, and then he slowly kind of grew it from there.
What's interesting, my dad started Sierra Bag Company when it all started in a garage. In this industry, in the recycling, there's so many people from the first generations, from the old Jewish families back east that started most of these scrap metal yards and stuff, started in a garage.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting, that's fascinating. So where are you today? Tell us about Allan Company today. What is your scope of business? Tell us a little bit about from the garage to Allan Company today.
So Allan Company today operates 11 facilities between Fresno and San Diego. We also have a finished product business, which we sell finished rolls out of. We also have a warehousing operation in Commerce. We also have partners. We're partners in other operations. The owners of Allan Company are partners in other operations around Los Angeles, other scrap yards, as well as a document destruction company.
So you're in the scrap metal, evil metal, huh?
We do a little bit of scrap metal. What happened was in the late 2000s, we were primarily paper stock dealers and CRV, which we're big in the CRV program. And
that's California Redemption Value. That's the cans and PET bottles and glass for those who aren't from California.
And what happened was our paper business started to decline because the print media was kind of going away. And so we were looking at other avenues to get volume through our yards. And so we started doing non-ferrous business, and then about 3 years later started doing ferrous business through our yards.
So it's come full circle.
Yeah.
We started, in the bags and what have you, and then as our scrap yard, we started taking paper.
Yeah.
So, it's funny how we all do things, and of course the equipment company, that's Sierra International, that's a whole different animal. So you also have trucks that pick up the blue bin, correct?
I do not pick up the blue bin.
You do
I
not?
service the blue bin for cities that pick it up.
Okay, so
And
blue
also
bin
other
comes
trash
here.
carriers. Yes, well, different locations, but here as well, yes.
Okay, in your different locations.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I want to get into this because I think so many people you run up to, oh, you're in the recycling business. Oh, I recycle my this and my that. And, okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, it must be a great business. Oh, what they don't know. So my question here is the blue bin myth. Let's talk about the blue bin in respect to what percentage of material put in the blue bin is actually recyclable versus it's just got to go to landfill at the end of it.
It really depends on the city. We have cities that vary between about 20% all the way up to about 45% waste in the material.
Is that a socioeconomic issue?
Partially that, partially is how often they service the bin, one
Okay.
bi-weekly or weekly. Also, do they charge for a second trash bin? Or there's a lot of cities they won't charge for a secondary recycling bin, but they will charge for a secondary trash bin. So people just order a recycling bin and throw their trash in. I mean, it's pretty commonplace. So it depends a lot on the policies of the city and what happens. Socioeconomic is another issue.
Tell us about that real quick. From the more affluent neighborhoods to the lesser neighborhoods, what's the difference in who has the better product to recycle?
Generally, the more affluent neighborhoods will have a little bit cleaner stream.
Okay.
But when you get into the less affluent neighborhoods, a lot of times you have multiple families in the same home. Trash can space is limited, so it ends up spilling over into the blue bin.
Okay, so that said, let's talk about things that are and are not recyclable that everybody thinks is or isn't. A pizza box. Somebody gets a Domino's pizza. Tell me about that.
Okay. Well, if there's no grease on it, it's perfectly recyclable. If it has,
What Domino's pizza doesn't have grease on it?
well, a lot of them put a sheet of wax paper underneath it so the grease doesn't go through the box. But in general, they're difficult to recycle. Can be done, but difficult for sure.
Okay, so give us some other things that in your experience, people put in the bin that they think is, or stuff they're not putting in that they should put in.
I think that a lot of times, especially when it comes to plastics, is where this is really the biggest issue. It really is a problem with the plastics. We have the Pacific, the garbage patch in the Atlantic and the
Right.
Pacific Ocean. Those things it's a significant issue that we're bearing the burden of. But I also think that they're lumping a lot of different commodities together that really aren't all bad.
Like
you know what I
what?
mean? Like for instance, you have PET and HDPE bottles.
Okay,
which,
tell the listeners, a PET bottle is your water bottle.
Water bottle. It's
Pepsi
PET
bottle.
is a soda water bottle, a normal one.
Okay.
It's polyethylene type, whatever agglomerate. I don't remember the term for it, but it's a number one bottle.
Okay.
Those are readily recyclable, and there's a market for them, and they're sold and they're bought and sold on a large scale basis.
Okay.
HDPE, which is more like your milk jugs and maybe your oil containers and stuff like that, that is also, there's a ready market for it, and it's bought and sold. Now, the problem is when you get into the other resin types, the 3 through 7s, either there is a market, but there's not enough volume of the resin type, or there is no market for certain resin types.
Okay.
And so now but what happens is what the one big mistake I think people make is they say plastics, right? Plastics are bad. Well, it's not all plastics. It's just some of the commodities, when they get into some real specialized manufacturing, marketing gimmicks, a lot of times they're mixing polymers of plastic together in a bottle to make it look neater or cooler, or you know what I mean. And you see that stuff. Like for instance, I'll give you a perfect example: an aluminum can that just came out.
Okay.
That I think it was Pepsi came out with Mountain Dew, and it's for video gamers to reseal, but it's got a plastic top on it and an aluminum can.
Okay, so that's problematic. You're contaminating the product.
So exactly, it's not a good recyclable for plastic, and it's not a good recyclable for.
So what's the solution there? Okay, so. Good analogy. So I got my aluminum can, and so now it's got the plastic.
Still paying a nickel for it because you have to.
It's got the plastic. So what is the challenge?
The challenge for that is they need to design the product for recycling in the first place, and it's something we talked about at ISRI a lot of times. It's really the most critical aspect of what is happening out there.
So the design, you take the basic, because they don't deal with the end consumption of it. They think, well, we got a recyclable plastic top and an obvious aluminum. We'll marry the two.
Yeah.
It's got to be recyclable, but in the end, it's creating a problem because it's a downgrade on the aluminum.
It's either too difficult or not enough volume of it, or it's
that'll
just,
change probably pretty quick, won't it?
I think that's really the message that needs to be put out there. I mean, everybody wants to solve the plastic pollution issue, which, you know, I think is a huge issue for not only our country but the world. And I think that, you know, the solution isn't to ban everything, but I think it is to make sure that the manufacturers design it correctly. You know, I mean, design it with the idea of it's going to be recycled at the end of it.
Yeah. So design for recycling is something that is hugely important and everybody wants to be green. And again, here's a classic case.
I don't know if I agree with that. Not everybody wants to be green. There's a whole section of people that are just designing stuff for marketing. So they're designing this specialized aluminum can or PET bottle that's designed for a certain section of the industry, video gamers or athletes or whatever it is, right? I'm designing this for them, but they don't take into account when they're designing this fancy new bottle for them or can or whatever it is, the design for recycling. And I think that needs to be brought more to the forefront when they design that stuff, rather than
who's going to bring that message to them, Jason? Where is it the people like yourself who are in the recycling industry who have to handle it, and there's the diminished value of this commodity after the amounts of money you have to spend just to get it to a consumer?
I think that message needs to be brought forth by, you know, the government, our government in general. If they really want to clean up issues like the Pacific garbage patch or the, you know, plastic going to landfills, whatever you want to describe it, I think that's really what needs to happen. Is they need to sit down and say, you know, we need to go to the manufacturer of these products and say, you can manufacture it in a different type of container and still get your same, you know, you're still going to have your same sales and you're still in the same marketing, but it could be recycled in the end. I mean, a Capri Sun pouch is a perfect example. It's aluminum and plastic with a straw glued on the outside with a cellophane wrap. I mean, it's it's just, you know,
it's just a mess,
a nightmare.
Okay,
you
know? so people, that's the item that people think they're doing their duty by putting it in the recycle bin, but yet it's garbage.
It's got so much going on. You know, it's not even close. You know, I mean,
I think that the education of the public in regards to what is and what isn't truly recyclable and why, because people don't understand what cross-contamination is. As recyclers, as people who handle all sorts of materials, Sierra does, Allan Company does, we understand you don't mix certain materials because it's a downgrade. Yeah. And that's the problem with glass. Yeah. Glass is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And, of course, the competing virgin product for glass is sand.
So there's no value in it.
I don't think we're running out of sand anytime soon, do you?
But, I mean, the truth of the matter is glass is readily recyclable. As long as you don't mix, you know, like ceramics or window glass, because it's a different type of glass. Okay. If it's just bottle glass, you know, wine, beer bottle.
Okay, so talk about that from the clear, amber, and green bottles. Uh-huh. Okay, what happens when they all get intermixed? Is it okay? They can recycle it now?
Yeah, they can recycle it. They can either make a darker color out of it, or they will optically sort it and try to get the clear out, make a clear brown and green color. So they can do it both ways.
So let's go back to the blue bin. Mm-hmm. If you could educate the public on that blue bin, what are give me 2 or 3 key points what you want the public to know about what to and not to put into the blue bin.
You know, if you're asking me, and this is my opinion,
yes,
the public should, if they don't know, they should throw it out. When in doubt, throw it out. Because if you're not,
it's funny you say that. Not because, see, as recyclers, we understand that, because what they don't understand is how much, if you can, give or take a blue bin, the cost. You know, look, I've been in a lot of huge MRFs, 20, 30, $40 million MRFs across this country. And they have these $1 million optical sorters that sort the different papers, the different plastics, and all this. But what does it cost per ton? Give or take, if you could put a range.
Well, it depends on the stream. You know, if the stream is extremely clean, it's cheaper, and if it's extremely dirty, it's
from a dirty end. How much does it cost on a dirty end?
You know, you're probably looking $130, $140 a ton. Maybe $150.
And you're talking about.
It all depends on your freights and everything, where you're going for your.
Okay, so let's use that $130. Let's use just $100. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with commodities now that aren't even worth $100 a ton.
Well, I mean, now here's your problem. Well, not only that, but the other issue is that over the last 2 years in that industry, we've had real issues with the end markets,
So-
either disallowing shipment or making the shipments have to be cleaner, right?
So with this market changes in the values of commodity, what's going to happen? The consumer's going to pay for this because the city's going to have to start charging more, because you just don't do this for free. The commodity doesn't bring the revenue to offset the cost. So is household going to start getting charged more for this, or are cities going to abandon recycling programs and just go straight to the landfill until commodity prices come back? What's going to happen?
I think it depends on where you live in the country. I think in California, most cities will end up charging more for their curbside. I think if you live in other areas where recycling isn't as important, they may stop the programs altogether. It's just a function of the desire of the community. In California, we have kind of mandated, recycling laws and recovery rates. So it's hard for the cities and the counties to say, we're not going to do this anymore. But they go back to the public and have to charge them more.
Right.
On the other side of that, I really look at the whole trash waste industry. I mean, you live in California. What has been the increase in your water and electric bill, your utility bills at your house from 10 years ago to today?
Significant.
I mean, 100%, 200%.
Well,
I mean, it's
significant.
It's California. It's
Right.
expensive. And if you look at the trash bill, it's been pretty stagnant for about 15 years.
That's going to change.
And that's going to change. You're going to see increase. I don't think it's going to go up 100%, but it's definitely going to have probably 20 or 30% increases in your waste bills. And I don't think that the public's going to have this great outcry that everybody thinks is coming.
Well, because it's going to be minimal per household. All right, so let's talk about something. Everybody always asks the question when we talk about, where do the PET bottles go? Where do the milk jugs go, and where the cans? So walk somebody who would listen to this who's not in our industry, walk them through. After you get the plastic, you sort it, you bale it. Who's taking it, and how are they making new product from it?
Okay, so the PET, for instance, gets ground and flaked and pelletized and made into either, they can make it into PET bottles again, depending on the process line, or they can make it into different sorts of PET sheets, which go into making like strawberry boxes and that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
they can go either direction. It also can be made into fiber to make clothing.
Okay.
Okay. The HDPE goes into similar aspects to that, where it'll go into a little bit different, unique, a little bit different items go back into HDPE for sure. And they also make sheet out of it and packaging.
Okay.
Packaging.
And cans, just simple.
Aluminum cans are probably the purest form of recycling. They go, almost all of them go directly into aluminum cans. So they go from aluminum cans to, I would say
melt it into, and
it just gets remelted, because what happens is it's cheaper to use the aluminum can from recycling than it is to use virgin metal, because they have to add a bunch of alloys to the virgin metal, and it's already in the regular aluminum can, so it's very simple. It's just, they don't really have to do, it's a much simpler process.
how many life can you get out of that? In other words, aluminum can, you can remelt it. At what point, how many times can you take a can before there's nothing left to?
I don't know that there is an end life to aluminum cans. They can continually be recycled.
What about cardboard and paper items?
Cardboard and paper, they call it I've heard it called the 7 or the 9 times rule. It can be recycled 7 or 9 times, depending on who you're listening to.
Okay, so somebody who goes to a fast food restaurant and they get a napkin, that's made from pretty much recycled fiber, right?
Not all of them, no.
But a lot are.
A lot are, but not all.
And what paper is being used to make those napkins?
It depends on the manufacturer, but most of those are made out of like an office pack.
Okay.
So like your office recycle bin would be made into that sort of stuff, or print shop material, that kind of stuff, much cleaner fiber.
What's the landfill cost? So here we are, we've talked about getting it to the end. Now, when you sort out everything and you've got 50%, 40% waste, now that's got to go to the landfill. What's the landfill fee? Who's paying for that?
It depends on the contract with the city, but sometimes it's the recycler, sometimes it's the city.
And for LA here and the different what's that cost
Depends
per ton?
on, right now you're looking probably around $45 delivered. Somewhere between $40 and $45.
So that's not so bad.
It's not.
I know in New Jersey and in New York,
it's much higher.
It's much higher. It's over $100 a ton.
Yeah.
So if you have the space, it's going to cost less. On the East Coast, they're out of space.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because people, like you say, when in doubt, throw it out. So it's a lot cheaper to spend $40 to go to a landfill than it is to sort it, spend $130 to sort it, and then on top of that, you have to spend $45, $50 to go to the landfill.
Yep.
So it's costing $200 a ton for something they think they're recycling, which it could have really only cost 40, 45.
But it's not that they think they're recycling. It is being recycled, okay, and it is being processed. It's just, it's costly. It's expensive to do, and if the decision is made that we want to recycle, when you say we're going to recycle, everybody, yeah, recycle. When you say we're going to recycle and it's going to cost you X, people go, oh, you know what I mean? It's not as important, but
well, that's the thing. Everybody, I think that's what's important. People have to understand. There's a huge cost to recycling, and the value of the commodities today do not represent enough. I mean, just the cost of doing it is way more than the value of the commodities.
Exactly.
And I think people they can be educated about that and be a little bit more selective of what they're putting into the blue bin, which would help reduce the cost.
Exactly.
How do we educate people? How does that happen? Who's in charge of helping to educate? Do we start at the school system? Do we start when kids are in kindergarten and all the public schools and teaching them this is how you put what you put in the blue bin? Is this?
There was a really interesting thing that I saw, which was the U.S. EPA is trying to come out with a standardized recycling program for the country, for the blue bin, which I really think would be very helpful. And that would be, if that happened, then the advertising from everybody in the country would be the same. Right now, you have all these different cities and counties across the country that accept different items in their bin. A lot of those are, legislated or lobbied for certain items to be in there to declare them recyclable. There's a lot of it's really when you look at it, it's kind of, if they had an actual list from a federal list saying this is what goes in the blue bin, I think it would make a lot of sense. The advertising would be so much simpler, because then everybody would be told the same thing. It's not going to be you live in Bakersfield, so you're told to put this in, and I live in a city and I'm told to put something else in there.
It's standardized.
Yeah.
I noticed I was in Europe a few weeks ago, and they at this in this town they had 5, 6, 7 different bins for food waste, for garbage, for plastic, glass, and what I saw was fascinating. I saw people actually looking and properly putting the right item in. So I found that and I go, well, somebody's been educated to do that. And that's where we need to go. And I think people who hear this podcast will be able to spread the word a little bit.
Yeah.
Put the right things in the blue bin. All right, so lastly, before I want to get into, we got a few minutes left here, the changes in the marketing conditions and everything. What's the next 5, 10 years look like for this style of recycling, the blue bin? What
for the blue bin or for just the industry?
We're on the blue bin because every household is familiar with it. What's the future of the blue bin recycling program?
I think the future is going to look very similar to the way it is now. With, I can really speak to California clearly. I don't really do that business across the country. In California, I think it's going to look similar to what we have now, and I think the commodity markets will return. Right now we have a very strange blip in the market, which is, the world's largest consumer of recovered material basically banned a lot of it or restricted a lot of it from coming in, which has forced, a market collapse.
Right.
And, and it's not the first time we've seen a market collapse, and it's not the first time that I've seen a market collapse from overseas government intervention. You got to remember, back in 1993, the Germans instituted the Green Dot Law, which everything had to be recycled. Everything had a green dot. They pushed so much material on the market, it collapsed the worldwide market for all scrap commodities.
Supply and demand.
Well, not scrap. I should say paper commodities. Right. They added so much supply to the stream, it ruined the market everywhere, and it ruined it for the better part of a year and a half, and then the market, or maybe 2 years, and then it recovered.
Yeah.
So this is a very similar. It's just, instead of them pushing more on the market, they basically have pulled the consumption off the market, and it'll take a year or two for it to recover.
Okay, so recyclers like you, processors across the country, you're having to talk with cities and counties. Mm-hmm. Every one of you. This I do know. How's the reception? How is it working when you go to the cities and say, look, here's where we are. How is that working?
It's varied. You know what I mean? It just depends. Some cities are very in tune with it and understand, and some don't. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's just some people don't understand. They just have it's my recycling. Why would I not be paid? And other cities have I understand what's going on. I've heard it. I get it. We need to change what we're doing.
Right.
And so it just depends on what city you're dealing with.
Well, it's a change as long as these commodity values are here. The change is coming, and well, look, it's like anything. We have to adapt.
But it's not just the commodity values. You have to understand the cost structure is very expensive too. It's not just about the sales in. At the same time, the sales has been decreasing. Our operating costs are going up because we're having to sort more. We're having to think about it. You're having to make a cleaner product.
Right.
And the market's coming down, so you're adding labor, man hours, and
more cost to a lesser
production
value
or equipment, and you're getting less money. It's just really it's like a horrible wave that just keeps hitting you every day. That you've got to. But I think we need to address that with the market needs to understand that, the cities do, and I think for the most part they're getting there. It's just, but it's hard. I mean they're used to being paid, and now they're being charged.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel right.
City budgets are tight everywhere.
But it doesn't seem right. You know what I mean? I should be paid.
Yeah.
It's not.
But the reality is that the commodities values. There's no secret what the values of commodities are.
Yep.
Everything is out there. All right. Well, Jason, I think people who listen to this will garner a lot of information. So, you and I have been friends for a long time. We both went to USC. Mm-hmm. Like I said, you said on my executive committee when I was chairman of ISRI, and we've had a lot of fun. And I want to tell us a fun, crazy story you have. I've got one, but I want you to go first to tell us a fun, crazy story, in the recycling industry, something that you still think about might bring a smile to your face.
Oh, well, that's a tough one. I'm having a tough time remembering one in this market, but that's okay.
All right, well, I'll go. Okay, you remember when former Vice President Al Gore, we were at a meeting with former Vice President Gore.
Yes.
And then Senator Barbara Boxer.
Yeah.
We're in this. We're at a fundraiser, and our trade association has done fundraising. It doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. We have been there, because our cause is important.
And for people that are the Congress people who are interested in recycling, of course, is who we're looking for.
Absolutely. And so there we were in the room, and I'll never forget. I was sitting next to Vice President Gore, and Senator Boxer was next to him, and we were going to start talking, and Vice President Gore said, "Oh, no, wait a minute." He goes, "I want to go around the room. I want everybody to introduce themselves." So I went first, John Sacco, Sierra. I got 150 employees, and we recycle and do equipment. And then my Uncle Tim was sitting next to me, who was an attorney, and he says, and then it came to you, and I'll never forget it. I'm Jason Young with the Allan Company, and we have 320 employees, and we recycle just a gazillion tons of paper a year. And he looked at you, and he says, "Well, you can recycle paper." You remember that?
Yes.
You looked at me like, I still laugh at that story.
Yeah.
I think it came out wrong for the poor guy, and all the offense to him, but you know what? That's a classic story to me. Former Vice President, no, you can recycle paper. Ugh.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of my favorite ones, John, I think you're aware, is the blowfish story. I don't know if it's a good story. We're on the ISRI board, and it was our final meeting, and John still has the picture in his office, I think.
Yeah, well, this is what happened. So we were in officer media training, and so as an officer of ISRI, so we were set down, we were given this thing about interviews, how to do interviews, and so we went through this class, and then this guy interviewed us, and this dude was brutal. Yeah. I mean, it was vicious. I'm sitting there, and I'm like, well, this guy's an SOB. I mean, this guy was mean. So we all did. There was myself, there was Jerry Sims, Doug Kramer, and Mark Luan. So I went first as chairman, and then chair-elect was Jerry Sims. So Jerry went, so we're all watching, we all had to watch everybody's video. There was Jerry. I mean, he was killing it. I was just envious of how good he was. All of a sudden, this guy asked him a question, and Jerry looked at the interview reporter and goes, and then everywhere we went from there, the blowfish. We started texting each other, the blowfish, and Jerry Sims had the blowfish.
Oh, that was fun.
Oh, that was great. And that listen, I do have that picture. God bless Jerry. He suffers from Parkinson's, and I don't think he wants people to know, but you know what? He's one of the most beautiful people on this planet.
Super nice guy. Yeah.
And it's just terrible. Last funny story I got. Okay. A couple years ago, me and my son came down and we went to a famous steakhouse. I forget the name, by Santa Anita.
The Derby.
The Derby. Okay. So he had to cut weight for this tournament. It was 164. And so we got down there and we go to the steakhouse, and the bread, this garlic bread, comes out. And it was the most amazing garlic bread I've ever had in any restaurant. So John Carl takes this little bite, and you just see him, John Carl, you can't have this. And so I see him sneaking a whole piece. And then he sneaks another one. And then the dessert comes. And the cheesecake was amazing. And the poor kid, he couldn't help it. He had a cheesecake. So we get back to the hotel that night. He gets on the scale, and he's 2.5 pounds overweight. So there we are. He's on the treadmill from 9:45 at night till 11 o'clock, sweating, gets in the jacuzzi, trying to lose weight. The next morning, we wakes up. He's still 0.5 pound overweight. Has to run down, get on that treadmill.
That's funny.
You almost disqualified him, Jay. Thank you for that.
I'm sorry.
I love that. It was the look on his face in the morning. He gets
they
on
kept
his
bringing out food, and he kept going,
and he was just picked because kid loves to eat. So that was classic. Jason, thank you for joining me. Thank you for doing this podcast, because I believe we're going to be able to help people understand the recycling industry, because it's a whole lot more than the blue bin, and it's a whole lot more than scrap metal. It's wide, and it's vast, and your interview here, your input is going to help educate people, and I thank you so much for being
Appreciate
here.
it, John.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
buddy.